Nebraska's athletic director, Trev Alberts, recognizes that in order for the University of Nebraska athletics to remain relevant, you have to invest everything that you can and then some into the football program. That's why he hired Matt Rhule. That's why Nebraska has pounced on name, image, and likeness deals early. And that's why Matt Rhule and Marcus Satterfield and Donovan Raiola have been working so hard to get Dylan Raiola to commit to Nebraska, which he did last night. And Nebraska now has a top 20 recruiting class per 24/7 Sports. They're 19th in the composite rankings and 20th when you only look at 24/7 Sports individual rankings and don't factor in ESPN, Rivals, and all the other recruiting rankings or on threes, which 24/7 Sports composite rankings do. But anyway, Dylan Raiola is the number 2 overall player per 24/7 Sports, number 6th overall player per composite. He's the best quarterback per 24/7 Sports in the 2024 recruiting class, and the second best behind Julian Sayin, an Alabama commit, per 24/7 Sports composite rankings. He's the number 2 overall player per 24/7 Sports, only behind wide receiver Jeremiah Smith. So this is a big deal. Dylan Raiola, as it stands today, would be Nebraska's highest rated overall commit in school history. What does this mean for Nebraska? Does it have great significance, or is this something we just have to keep our eyes on and has a lot of potential to blossom, but nothing's guaranteed? We'll find out. Welcome back, fellow football fanatics. It's your host, College Football with Sam. Before we resume this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so that you can get notified when I post more about Nebraska football, college football, and when I make recruiting videos like these, which are typically shorter, and I normally only do in the preseason and postseason or around National Signing Day, which is tomorrow. Also, comment your thoughts on this commitment down below. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, because on one hand, landing your best recruit in school history is impressive. That's a badge that Matt Rhule, Donovan Raiola, Marcus Satterfield, Tony White, that everyone on that staff, but especially those that recruited Dylan Raiola, can wear. That's good. And this gives Nebraska football momentum heading into 2024. This gives some much needed depth and talent and clarity to the quarterback room in my mind. It's a battle between Dylan Raiola and Chubba Purdy. It's not even close. Jeff Sims entered the transfer portal a few days ago, and Heinrich Harburg, quite frankly, I do not think is, at this point, even in the conversation for quarterback one entering 2024. This, of course, assumes that Dylan Raiola will remain committed to Nebraska. He committed to Ohio State, then decommitted and committed to Georgia, and then decommitted from Georgia and is now committed to Nebraska. That's not the biggest deal in the world. I don't think it's necessarily a red flag. I do think it's a yellow or maybe orange flag. If you go to Ohio State, I don't care if you sit a year or two, you're likely going to be developed into an NFL quarterback, whether it's Fields, whether it's Haskins, whether it's Stroud, and really even Kyle McCord if he was just willing to stick around for another year. But especially the former 3 players have all been developed into NFL quarterbacks by Ryan Day. At Georgia, it's a little different going from Todd Monken to Mike Bobo, but I still think that Bobo's good at developing quarterbacks, as proven by Matthew Stafford, Aaron Murray, etc. And now he comes to Nebraska, and familial ties obviously they had influence here. But I also think that Raiola wants to start. He wants to come out and maybe sit for a year at most, and then take the reins and get the keys to what hopefully for him is a Lamborghini and not a run-down, old, rusty town and country Chrysler, which is what Nebraska's football program has been for the past half decade, if not closer to a decade than not. But this commitment is big because Nebraska at times this season was a quality, not even elite or great, but quality quarterback away from winning. I'd argue they were a quality quarterback away from going bowling. If they had a quality quarterback against Minnesota or against Michigan State or against Maryland, they win those games. And that turns Nebraska from a 5-7 team to an 8-4 team in all conference games. And did they beat Iowa? I don't know. Did they beat Wisconsin? Well, they had quality quarterback play against Wisconsin, so I'd say probably not. They certainly don't beat Michigan, and maybe or maybe not they beat Colorado, but that's beside the point. The season's done. It's over with. It's useful to play the hypotheticals game in some areas, but in a circumstance like this, you want to take, I'd say, a longer point of view, and you want to look into the future. The number one quarterback per 24/7 Sports rankings, and 24/7 Sports is the most reliable recruiting service there is out there, so I'm going to trust their individual rankings more than their composite rankings. The number one overall quarterback will likely sign with Nebraska tomorrow. That's a big deal. That's a very big deal. Now, I'm not going to say that Nebraska football is back and beat my chest or encourage Nebraska fans to beat their chest. I'm not even a Nebraska fan. I'm a Michigan fan. But this is a step in the right direction. This is like Steve Sarkisian recruiting better at Texas and getting Quinn Ewers and getting Isaiah Nair. I know that he didn't really start at Texas due to injury, but that was still a big get at the time. Hopefully he does well at whatever school he ends up transferring to. And, recruiting Xavier Worthy and bringing on Pete Kwiatkowski and great staffers and Kyle Flood to manage the offensive line. That's important. And that's why I picked Texas to be back this season and win the conference, and they ended up fulfilling that prediction. For Nebraska, this is a step in the right direction. Good recruiting classes, plus good development, plus the team clearly has an identity. I know they pivoted a few times later in the season. I think that's because they were desperate and really wanted to go bowling, but they clearly have an identity of running the football. They want to get their tight ends involved. And this recruiting class for Nebraska, we'll get to Dylan Raiola more in a few seconds or a few minutes here, but there are some great players that aren't only skill positions here that Nebraska is recruiting. Grant Bricks, best overall player from Iowa, offensive tackle, top 200 player, he's committed to Nebraska. Preston Tamua, I hope I pronounced that name right. He's from Hawaii, 4-star interior offensive lineman. And Daniel Kalen, another quarterback, true freshman from Nebraska, the second best overall player from Nebraska, he's committed. So 2 quarterbacks. Likely, hopefully, maybe Kalen doesn't stay around, but the staff did say that they would honor his scholarship. So there's a good balance between skill position players, offensive linemen. I'm really seeing at the top of this class offensive players, and that's good. Tony White has done a good job developing defensively, and it's the offense really that was just a major issue both this year and actually in 2021 and in some other years during the Scott Frost era. And a lot of Scott Frost players are still on the roster here. But this is a good recruiting class, and I think Nebraska's recruiting class is mostly finished high school-wise. Transfer portal-wise, I do expect Nebraska to get more than 10 incoming transfers. I still think they need to fill some holes and build up some depth. But this is a great recruiting class right now, and Dylan Raiola really was adding the whipped cream and the cherry on top to what was already a delicious vanilla shake, but with the whipped cream, with the cherry, with the sprinkles. Maybe you add a whole serving of ice cream on top there. Make it into a very delicious dessert. I don't know if that's a good analogy, but this is a big addition. It doesn't make the recruiting class 2 or 3 times better because Dylan Ryle is just one player out of 26, but he's the best player out of those 26 players. So far this season, Dylan Raiola is 159 out of 250 in completions and attempts. He's thrown for 2,819 yards, 34 passing touchdowns, only 1 interception, and he has 3 rushing touchdowns. I think he has about 30 rushing attempts for negative 30 or negative 40 yards. He didn't really show much scrambling ability this season, but he's not exactly a statue either. He does have some athleticism, and he's big. 6'3", 230 pounds. By comparison, I think J.J. McCarthy at Michigan is 6'2", 6'3", but like 200. And McCarthy is 3, maybe 4 years older than Dylan Raiola. I think he's 3 years older. Raiola is, like his father and his uncle, built like an offensive lineman. Like, he has that build in him to be an offensive lineman or a tight end or someone who's big, to be a physical presence, and to have that type of build in stock at quarterback. Maybe it's not helpful, but part of me is inclined to think that it is. It can give him some cushion and protection of his own behind an offensive line that is definitely going to need reworking. It improved this season, but it was far from perfect, and if Nebraska wants to compete for championships, that offensive line is going to have to be much better. He will be Nebraska's highest-rated recruit in the history of the program if he does indeed end up staying committed to Nebraska, which at this point, I think he will. He's gone through Ohio State, gone through Georgia, and Georgia already has their own quarterback in Ryan Puglisi. I think I pronounced his name right. Coming from the New England area. He's a middle-of-the-road 4-star quarterback, really good player. And other programs would really want to have Raiola, but I'm sure he has a nice name, image, and likeness deal with Nebraska. Nebraska's been good on the NIL front. He has familial connections to the university through his father, and also his uncle, Donovan Raiola, who's currently the offensive line coach for Nebraska and is listed as his primary recruiter. Matt Rhule is a guy that has great relationships with his players, and Raiola committing to Ohio State or Georgia is one thing. You already go into a good system, and in the case of Ohio State, you have a proven developer. In the case of Georgia, you're playing for a team that has proven to be the best in the past 3 seasons of competing for national championships. Believe me, a healthy Georgia this season in, let's say, an 8 or 12 team playoff would be intimidating. No one would want to play them. Alabama caught them having a bad day and also unhealthy, but it is what it is. The games are played. The results are final. Going to Nebraska means that Dylan Raiola can build himself up in a way that paints him as, in a certain sense, saving the program or reviving the program and being a part of building something. And that's something that great players, and that's something that people with talent, people with confidence want to do. They want to go somewhere where they can make things better, where they can be a part of something. And Nebraska right now, from a Power 5 perspective, and a perspective of proven success over the past few seasons, is one of the most, it's cruel, but it's honest, pathetic programs. They've been horrifically inefficient relative to the talent that they recruit. They haven't been to a bowl game since Obama was president. That was a long time ago, guys. 2016 was the last time that Nebraska went to a bowl game. Raiola can come to Lincoln and he can build the program. He may even be able to put the program on his back to a certain degree if he is generationally talented. Maybe he puts the program on his back, and then after he leaves, this is making a lot of assumptions and speculation, but this is what we do with high school recruiting, really. Maybe after he leaves, Nebraska, dips back to not the same level that they were under Scott Frost or in year 1 of Matt Rhule, but they aren't the same. In the same way that after Trevor Lawrence left Clemson and after Deshaun Watson left, after those 2 quarterbacks, Clemson wasn't the same. That was also due to a variety of other reasons, but you get the point. Dylan Raiola can come to Lincoln. He can revive Nebraska, or at least maybe he thinks he can. And he also has ties. He's a legacy recruit. And he's going to get paid a boatload of money. And might be more important than all of this, he could start as a true freshman. Every player, their dream is to come in and immediately compete for the starting job, immediately get on the field, immediately get accolades, and immediately show the whole world how good they are. And his best shot to show that in the short term is Nebraska. Now, in my own head, do I think that maybe if you go to Ohio State, you'll have a much better chance of being developed and that'll be better for the long term of your future? Yeah. Do I think that behind what currently is a Joe Moore Award caliber O-line in Georgia, it was the case in 21 and 22, and it will probably be the case as long as Kirby Smart is there because they're physical in the trenches? Will you have a chance of being healthier, better protected? Therefore, that helps your development. Plus, you get Mike Bobo, who's a proven quarterback developer. Yeah, but each person has their own opportunity cost. And I guess for Dylan Raiola, in his mind, things just work out better at Nebraska than Ohio State or Georgia. And that's phenomenal for what I believe is the best and most dedicated fan base in the land that resides in Lincoln, Nebraska. Raiola will have every opportunity to win the starting quarterback job next year. It will be between him and Chubba Purdy, the brother of Brock Purdy, who right now is killing it in the NFL. Chubba Purdy this season started against Wisconsin and also started against Iowa, going 0-2 in those games, but maintaining a 75.1 QBR, throwing 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions on the season, 382 offensive or passing yards, 180 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown. He completed 54.4% of his passes, took 5 sacks, had 29 carries. He has athleticism, 6'2", 210 pounds, definitely Nebraska's best quarterback in terms of overall ability. Not the same athlete as Heinrich Harburg or Jeff Sims, but not as turnover prone on the ground or through the air, and a much better passer. So Nebraska, they have options at quarterback. You have Dylan Raiola, you have Chubba Purdy. I don't think Heinrich Harburg is going to be in the mix for the starting quarterback, but he could be a good depth piece. You could, throw in a few wrinkles at opposing defenses with him and his mobility, or switch him to a different position. This recruiting class is great, and Dylan Raiola is he's an elite high school player. Let's hope that he's an elite college player, because we wish every player the best and that they can achieve at the highest level possible relative to what they can offer. So thank you all for watching this video talking about Dylan Raiola and Nebraska's 2024 recruiting class. I want to give a shout out to Crash2488, my Heisman patron for the month of December, Spencer Bringhurst, my All-American patron for the month of December, and Will Loftus, Gabriel Callender, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Chris Lane, Austin Christmas, and Zubin Zah, my all-conference patrons for the month of December. Have a phenomenal day, guys, and I will see you all around. One more thing, actually, before you go. Check out my Patreon page via the link in the description and the pinned comment if you want to support the channel and also gain access to some bonus content. I haven't been very active on Patreon recently, but it's something that I am going to get more into, probably with shorter content and more unique content. So stay tuned. I'm trying to learn more about YouTube and Patreon like I have forever since I've started these things, but you get better the more you learn. Have a phenomenal day.